What's up, everybody? Sorry about that. We're running a little bit behind. I apologize. Typically like to start off at 12 o'clock, but we've got a sickie at home today, and I'm making sure she's okay, and I'm making sure I've got a little bit of a full boat. So this might be a little bit of an abridged, version of our exam breakdown today. I'm going to go through a few things, and then I'm going to have to bounce. And if you can't catch it and you're going to miss a couple of bits, no big deal. We're going to post it, obviously, at the end of this session, so you'll see it on YouTube in a little bit. And today what I want to do is I wanted to go and make a little bit of a different approach. We've been getting a ton of questions lately about all kinds of different topics. So what I wanted to do today was do a bit of some Q&A. I initially had a bunch of Q&A to do with several questions, and what I might in fact do is pick it up again next week because I think this format is really going to resonate with a lot of you. These questions have been filtered over, a long time. And so recently students have been asking us questions, but for years, my backstory is I've been teaching content for years, for almost 3 decades. And so I've, gotten pretty used to these different disciplines. Real estate happens to be one of my, things. I professional investor. I've been involved in hundreds of millions of dollars of varied transactions over the years between, my portfolio and between financing and between all of these different pieces that I've helped people represent, I've negotiated with, I've worked on, I've purchased myself, syndicated deals, all of this other stuff, sort of my backstory really is, made real estate one of those things. Now, over the years, with examinations and getting licensed and everything else, I've been teaching students forever. So my backstory is I've got a lot of experience doing this. I've got a lot of, tactical experience, technical experience, actual experience. So I've been doing this for a while. The teaching, I've taught tens of thousands of people, passing exams and everything in between. So with that, over the years, there is a cluster of very common questions that students tend to ask me. And so what we've done here, we've taken years worth of data. We've taken years worth of my experience. We've taken years worth of questions and surveys and comments and everything else. And recently with YouTube, a lot of questions from students all over the country now, which has been spectacular to meet all of you. And so we've kind of pumped them in and come up with a great list of amazing questions and some answers that I want to give you. Once again, my name is D. Kumar. Thank you very much for joining us. If you don't know, then you know that we have something called the Exam Breakdown every Monday, every Wednesday. We work on exam prep for our YouTube channel. It's one of our strong suits. And among other things, it's one of the things that I enjoy doing the most. I love helping folks get through exams, getting licensed, and moving forward so that they can continue to do amazing things. So, with that being said, and just to sort of recap, I've got a sickie at home, one of my children, and I've got to tend to her in a little bit. So she's chilling out, she's eating some lunch, but I want to make sure that she's doing all right. We got a doctor's appointment in a little while. So I want to go through some questions with y'all and answer some stuff for you, and then we're going to pick this thing back up. If I have to, I'll come back on this week. If I can't do it, if we get through enough, I will get through the rest of it by next Monday, and we'll go from there. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. If you are looking to learn about anything real estate in a positive environment, and we help with all of those exams and everything else as well. All right, so let's do this. Let us get into this Q&A. Let me sort of make sure this is lined up for y'all. Okay. Let me do this. 1 second. There I am. Alrighty, so let's get into this. So we are live, by the way, and things can go wrong. I'm kind of running the mothership today by myself. So I'm looking over my shoulder a little bit just to make sure we're good to go. Looks like we are. So the way I want to do this format, the way that this is going to go, is I want to make sure that we talk about certain questions that have come up over and over and over and over again. And I'm fairly confident this stuff is on exams. So it's one of those things where people have asked when they are learning, and it's also one of these things where we know there's a high probability across the United States that this is going to show up. So question Number one, this question is, what is subagency and is it common? And these are questions from students that have come across our desks over the years. Okay, so here's the question, what is subagency and is it common? And let's go to the next slide. So let me give you the breakdown here. Subagency is a relationship between a listing agent and another agent who works to bring in buyers. The subagent's duties are to the seller, not the buyer. And that's sort of the critical component here, the underlying fact that we need to know. Let me just get something to write on. Let me use that. All right, so something first and foremost is subagency is a legit thing. What subagency is it is a situation where there is a third party. So typically what most people are used to in the real estate business, I'm just going to kind of draw up here, is they're used to a seller's agent. And then on the other side of the transaction, there's a buyer's agent. All right. And then one agent will represent the seller. This is like the listing company or the seller's agency. And another one is the buyer, and the buyer is being represented by a buyer's agency. So there's a seller's agency and a buyer's agency. And by the way, they typically split the commissions when they represent the various parties. All right. So we know that there's this grouping. Let's do something here. Let me see something. All right. So we know that there's this grouping. And what subagency in essence is subagency, what it was, and it was replaced by buyer's agency. Subagency was a scenario where the seller was being represented by a seller's company. And then what the seller's company would do is reach out to an other company and say, hey, would you happen to be able to assist us in finding buyers for our seller? And so the other company, instead of being a buyer's representative, was being retained by the seller's company to help find a buyer. So the buyers would be introduced to this company, and this company worked underneath this company that worked for the seller. So like sort of the hierarchy would be the seller, and then the seller's agency, all right, SA. And then underneath the seller's agency is this other company. I'm just going to write OC for other company. So the hierarchy was this way. And the subagency relationship is this. So subagency is where the subagent's duties are to the seller and not the buyer. So this was very confusing. And it's been confusing forever because in the 90s, they came up with this other alternative called buyer's agency. And buyer's agency was the allowance of real estate professionals to be able to represent buyers. And so this is one of those classic ones on exams. You see it because a lot of students don't understand this relationship. And because they don't understand it, test writers write about it because it's not outlawed. It's still allowed to be practiced. But however, it has been replaced by the buyer's agency. Now, most transactions today involve buyer's agents directly representing the buyer, or something known as dual agency, where there's one firm is representing both sides. So subagency is much less common than it used to be. So is it common? Way less. However, on exams, it shows up. So you want to be able to understand, and you'll find this in agency style questions. So ask yourself as you're reading these agency style questions is what is happening here? And even if you have like the ability to just draw something out, do that, and it should serve you well to try to figure out where the fiduciary obligations are lying, that a sub-agent owes that care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality to the seller, not to the buyer. And the buyer in a subagency relationship is simply treated as a customer. So this is a classic one and a good one to review because it is relevant for real estate exams. Another question that came in is, what is the difference? What is the difference between a void and a voidable contract? And it's a classic question. You get it. So when you teach contracts in real estate courses or any course, law school or whatever, contracts are going to bring up these different ones. And really this one avoidable is the question that a lot of students tend to have. And so a void contract is a little bit easier to understand because there's some like sort of finality to it, right? Like it's like, okay, there's a void contract. That means that it's missing something that makes it unenforceable in court, legally unenforceable. And a voidable contract, however, is a contract that's written properly, but one or both of the parties can disaffirm or back away from their portion and render it voidable by one or both parties. So a voidable contract is one of those contracts that can confuse students. So the way it always works is there's a valid contract, there's void, and there's voidable. Okay. And when I teach it, I also like communicate, hey, listen, there's also enforceable contracts and there's unenforceable contracts. You know, obviously there's bilateral, unilateral, there's all of these different sort of variants, but that's the way that this works. Now, what is a voidable contract? So what is the difference between a void and a voidable contract? So a void contract is unenforceable and has no legal effect from the beginning. It wasn't properly written. So a contract, a classic one, is some contract for illegal activities. So there has to be this offer and an acceptance of an offer. There has to be consideration in a contract. There has to be mutual assent, meeting of the minds. There has to be for a legal purpose. So there are these elements that contracts must have. And if they are missing any of these elements, for example, if it's for an illegal purpose, well, then the contract is void. So void contracts are missing the elements, any of the elements of a valid contract. So if it's missing that, now you'll find the elements of a valid contract in your real estate books. So wherever you are studying, wherever you are learning this stuff, look in your books under contracts and you're going to find the elements of a contract. And once you find there, memorize those. And then if you play down backwards, if there's anything missing, like the illegality of a contract will come up. And if you see that, then you know that it's a void contract. Now, a voidable contract is a valid contract. So it hits all of the marks of a contract, but it can be canceled by one party due to some specific legal ground. The classic one could be fraud or misrepresentation. And the big one that you see on real estate exams is for a minor. So a minor child entering into a contract, or somebody that's mentally incapacitated or not of legal age to contract, involves themselves in a contract, and then that contract would be voidable by the minor. So the minor can back out of their portion of the contract. So it's voidable by the minor. And so void and voidable, absolutely on exams. Look out for it. All right. Another question that we got from our team, from our students, is what is the difference between joint tenancy and a tenancy in common? Joint tenancy versus a tenancy in common. Now, what both of these are co-ownership. So there's ownership in severalty or sole, and then there's co-ownership. And joint tenancy, I'll say JT, tenancy in common, TIC. There's tenancy by the entirety. Then there's community property. Okay. And co-ownership is where more than one party owns the property together. Where's all of this found? It's found in the deed. So I'm sort of asking a bit rhetorically. I'm not looking at the questions if any of you guys are asking them, but rhetorically speaking, is it possible for more than one person to own real estate? Well, the answer is yes. Can a company own real estate? The answer is yes. Can a company and a human being own real estate together? The answer is yes. Can two human beings own real estate together? Yes. Can spouses own property together? Yes. Can spouses own property separately? Yes. So all of these different variants exist. Can, three business partners own property together and they want equal ownership interest? Yes. Can you own 90% of an investment property and I own 10% of that investment property? Yes. All of our names, if we are doing business together, will show up in a document called the deed. The deed is simply a receipt to a piece of real estate. That's all a deed is. So a deed is a receipt to a piece of real estate, and that's all it is. And all of this language, joint tenancy, tenancy by the entirety, tenancy in common, tenancy in severalty, all of this stuff shows up in the deed. All right, so that's forms of ownership simply means co-ownership is that at minimum two parties own the property concurrently together. Okay, that's what that means. So what's the difference between a joint tenancy and a tenancy in common? So in a joint tenancy, co-owners have equal shares, and there is something called a right of survivorship. Oh, you're going to see that on your exam. Meaning, if one dies, the property passes to the other co-owners. So when something has the right of survivorship, it means that the surviving co-owners get the interest when one of the co-tenants dies. So if there's A and B and they're joint tenants, which has the right of survivorship, if A passes away, A's interest in that property doesn't go to A's estate. It goes to B, and that means it has the right of survivorship. So y'all need to make sure you sort the difference between no right of survivorship and the right of survivorship. That's the trick. And if you understand that, it's a bit counterintuitive as well, but you want to just know that if it has the right of survivorship, like yes, it has it, then if one of the co-partners dies, then their interest goes to the surviving co-owner. If A and B own a property as joint tenants, and it says that in the deed with right of survivorship, if A passes away, then B now inherits all of the interest that A once held. It doesn't go to A's estate. But if an co-ownership has no right of survivorship, like a tenancy in common. See, a tenancy in common has no right of survivorship. Then that means that if A passes away, A's interest goes to A's estate and A's heirs. So that's how that works. And that's critical. You need to make sure you get this. Watch this section over, and it's going to help you and serve you well, I promise. Now, an other fundamental difference is a joint tenancy will always have equal shares. So if A, B, and C want to be joint tenants and A brings all the money to the investment and B and C don't bring any money to the investment, if the deed says A, B, and C is joint tenants, then A, B, and C have an equal interest in this property. It's equal, period, regardless of who brings in all the money. But in a tenancy in common, if A, B, and C all decide to buy an investment property and A brings the lion's share of money, let's say A brings 90% of the money, B brings in 5% of the money, and C brings in the other 5%, well, then in that case, they would put on the deed A, B, and C as tenants in common, because tenants in common can have unequal shares. And that's the major difference between joint tenancy and a tenancy in common. Tenancy in commons are like common areas also in condominiums and such. And those are important to also understand. So co-ownership is important. You need to read through it. It's absolutely on real estate exams. Hopefully this one serves you well. All right. So with that being said, my apologies. I do need to fly a little bit early. Like I said earlier in the beginning of this, I've got a sick one home. One of my children is home sick today, and I need to tend to her. I want to make sure she gets to the doctor, and we're gonna, but she's doing great. She just needs a little bit of my focus, right? So, all right. With that being said, I'm cutting this a little bit short. So my apologies. I will be back to finish this list. The list is awesome. It's a bunch of questions that we've compiled over years, knowing that this stuff is going to show up on examinations in every single state, and knowing that these are the sense of confusion for like every student. And this is the goal of this is to go through it. What I'd like to also be able to do is give you some sample questions in between all of this. So I might go back and re-edit some of this stuff so that you have some practice questions inside of it, and then release it as sort of one master work, because it might in fact serve you well to know that these are the classic questions and to know what to look out for. It's the traps that we found over the years that are going to serve you well. All right. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel if you are studying and want to learn about real estate, pass your real estate exams, and you want to do it in a positive environment. My name is D. Kumar. Good luck with your studies. Good luck with all of that. Please take this examination, and please thank you. Thank you so much. Our channel is growing. We couldn't be more thrilled. We are helping people all over the country, and the content is helping folks pass examinations, and it's awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love teaching people, and I love to see you win. That's our goal here for this channel. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. On Wednesday, I'm going live. And we're doing the mortgage loan originators. I love helping those folks as well. I've got a lot of backstory in that industry. I know a lot about that examination, and I'm very comfortable helping folks understand the possibilities of what could be on that examination. So I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday if that's what you want. It could help some stuff with your real estate examination. If not, y'all, the exam breakdown for real estate professionals is every Monday around noon. Apologies for being a little bit tardy today. And I will see you all very soon in an upcoming video. Thanks. Keep the comments coming. Ask us some questions. If there's anything you'd like us to cover, please let us know in the comments, and we will absolutely start working on it for you. All right. I'll see you on the other side.